Konami was up to something before the OCG. Let's see what it is. Episode 50. Wow, I had to do something special, and what better than going back to the past? I've covered the series' origin, the OCG, and even the Bandai game, but I want to tackle something even more obscure. That's right, and for that we'll have to go straight to the source, the Yugioh manga. In Kazuki Takahashi's original work, there was a game introduced in Chapter 9, released on November 25th, 1996, called Magic and Wizards. This was a clear nod to the popular real-life game Magic the Gathering and their distributor, Wizards of the Coast. I mean, compare Summon Skull to Magic's Lord of the Pit. Yeah, not so subtle. The game wasn't about raw stats, as it had a crude alignment system, which would be further elaborated by the Duelist Kingdom arc in December 1997. This arc stemmed from positive feedback Takahashi received from the previous appearance of Magic and Wizards. Clearly he was onto something. Yugioh was on a roll, and by March 1998, there was a small blurb in Jump 18 that could be alluded to as an upcoming Yu-Gi-Oh video game. 1 month later, the Toei-produced anime would be released, which fans would later dub as Season 0. If you all would like me to talk about this anime more, then just let me know. Jump 19 at the time mentioned that the anime would rename the in-anime card game as Duel Monsters to differentiate itself from the manga's game, although you can still see the MW design on the back of the cards. That said, there were also another reason behind the scenes. It was likely that at this time, the entertainment company Konami obtained the rights for the Magic and Wizards card game, considering they were in production on what would be the series' first Game Boy game, whose rules would follow the manga more closely. Jump 24 in May would also mention the impending release, and in June 1998, Jump 26 fully described the game to be called Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. The interesting part is that in the August Jump 37 to 38 combined issue, there is a mention of MW cards, which alludes to the fact that Konami have been working on the cards since probably April or June, July in regards to a further stage in production. In Akamaru Jump in late September, the magazine discusses Project Magic and Wizards with cards that would not be interpreted the same as the Bandai game, such as Dragon Capture Jar being a trap instead of a monster, cards not even in the later released Bandai game like Electro Whip, and effect monsters like Reaper of the Cards. Konami was taking their time to prepare a physical card game well in advance. The project would be of an interesting note due to the Bandai game also coming out on the same September month. This odd card game was more of a supplement to the Toei anime, which was probably why it was named purely Yu-Gi-Oh! And had a different rule set than anything like what Takahashi envisioned. Bandai's reign would only last for roughly 6 months, but the March 99 Toei Anime Fair Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie pamphlet did mention that both Bandai and Konami's games were being designed at the same time, and that Konami's OCG was an evolution of Bandai's game. Even Season 0 mentioned Konami, like in episode 17. They were even a sponsor of the Toei anime, so it's not like Konami was sneakily producing a game. The confusing rules and lack of promotion ultimately ended the original card game's run, allowing for Big Brother Konami to take full control of Yu-Gi-Oh! Media production. I mean, the Toei anime did end in October 98, failing to implement a second season, aside from the March 99 film, which was at Animation Studios' bookend. Could you imagine a possible season 2? Maybe that should be a future video. December 98 would mark the release of the first post-Bandai way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, or DM1. The game follows rules conceived before the official rules. In this game, there are only Monster, Magic, Fusion, and Evolution cards. Evolution would be brought back and, well, evolved as the level mechanic where monsters upgrade each turn. Though sources in the past such as Jump 50, 47, 43, and 42, and October's edition of PlayStation Magazine all brought up a soft release tournament and trial events sometime in early fall. Konami also held a contest where fans could submit card designs to be included in the game, cards that would be later made into physical cards such as Genin, Doron, and Bat. Furthermore, card designers would step up and mention their creations for DM1, such as Ancient Tree of Enlightenment, Necrolancer the Time Lord, and Magirus Light. That is to say, Konami were ahead of the game. And if you're enjoying this video, then definitely do that YouTube engagement stuff that will help the powers that be push this video out to a wider audience. And you can go even further beyond and join my Patreon to help ensure the Janjo Zone keeps rocking and rolling. Your help is greatly appreciated. While the video game would be released at this point, Konami filed the rights for MW on December 3rd, meaning they knew it would only be a matter of time, just once they refine their game mechanics from the video game to the physical form. One such method is test prints. These prints were most likely made in the late summer, not long after the confirmation Konami was working on the cards. The big difference compared to the retail versions is the MW logo on the card backs. While some are random cards for the sake of testing purposes, others didn't include a name, which were due to Konami figuring out rarities for Volume 1 cards. There were even Tokyo Dome Invitation test prints, cards straight from the Duelist Kingdom arc that were intended to add to the overall manga to MW physical experience. For quite some time, the MW cards weren't even known to exist, being only discovered in the last few years due to Japanese auctions popping up. While fakes do exist, prints have been confirmed by CGC, which guarantees authenticity, passing their spectral scans with checks for the ink composition and matching with other produced cards, among many other checks too that, for your sake and my own sanity, I won't go in depth for. But with Magic and Wizards come some inherent issues. For one, Takahashi originally designed it to be a more or less ripoff, a footnote in the series at that. While the idea of the OCG referring to the manga was cute, in reality, as time of release drew near, it was clear that the name in the long run would not fly, legally speaking. In Jump 3, January 1999, there was an advertisement for the upcoming Volume 1 set, except that you can see that there's a big black box covering the MW logo, meaning that Konami was implementing the name change seemingly at the last minute. Because magazines are sent out for publishing well in advance, so the MW name was still trying to hang on. The Perfect Master Book Volume 2 refers to over 100 cards that have been made, including the MW copyright. Konami was ahead of the card game, with Akamaru Jump Winter showcasing even more cards, such as the green-colored Kairushin, and cards to be released much later down the line, like Illusionist Faceless Mage and Thousand Dragon, which you can imagine must be annoying when you suddenly need to change the copyright on all the cards currently being printed. To further emphasize this, Volume 1 was comprised of cards only from the manga, or DM1, aside from Fissure and Trap Hole, meaning the early card pool was decided upon at an early stage. Jump 6 was promoting Volume 1 to be released in late January, but it was inevitably delayed due to the name change. Showcasing Konami's rush, some print sheets shows a high amount of errors, sheets that combine both Volumes 1 and 2. Despite Jump 799 confirming the game's name change, the starter box advertisement was still presented as MW. The old name was also present in Jump 9 and Spring Akamaru Jump. And even though Konami ultimately dodged the bullet in regards to a released product, they would eventually be sued a number of times by Wizard of the Coast, including over Blue Eyes White Dragon in 2002 and in 2003 for the term Magic in relation to the card type and the 2002 Magic Ruler set. Then on February 4th, 1999 came the fateful day where Volume 1 would be released. It would be officially named under the title Yu-Gi-Oh! Official Card Game. Perhaps going with this name instead of Duel Monsters was a way to promote the series as a whole, or out of simplicity, but I digress. The rule set wasn't actually established until the booster set rule cards and the subsequent starter box, so for the first set, the game technically was played under DM1's rule sets plus trap cards. The MW cards that were leaked to the public seemed to be done by an individual who had access to the cards, and not a case of accidental leakage in random packs. Though our story does not end here. After the release of DM1, Konami would immediately start production on its sequel, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 2. This was elaborated on in Konami Magazine, Volume 11 in March 99. This would mean that a large chunk of the cards that were created for the upcoming game would have been done early on in the OCG's lifespan. All this leads to the credence that Konami, after making 100 cards or so, started working on counterparts as a way to fill in the production gaps, as DM2 DM2 would introduce a plethora of recolors that would be drip-fed throughout the year, like Penguin Soldier and Penguin Knight, Empress Judge and Gyakutenu Megami, and Gatekeeper and Royal Guard. Cards that originated here would extend to even 2023 with the release of cards like Cornfield Kotal and Mirror Sword Knight. What's more is that DM2 would bring back the alignment system from the manga. This mechanic would continue on to Sacred Cards and Rechef of Destruction, which would truly mark the end of Magic and Wizards. Another game that was put into production right after DM1 was Shin Duel Monsters, or perhaps better known as Forbidden Memories. Even though it used the same card pool as DM2, development for this game took significantly longer due to the use of 3D elements and the fact that DM2 was built off the first entry, so that game could be finished quicker. This is further expressed by the game featuring Tokyo Dome assets, which meant that Konami intended for the game to be released earlier than December 99, to be alongside DM2, which was released around the time of the Tokyo Dome tournament. So clearly Konami wanted this to be a marketing ploy. Shin would use a similar alignment system to DM2, just with more cosmic flair. Something else weird but interesting to briefly mention were that between volumes 4 and 7 were Studio Dice prints which had a unique copyright, though these are not as rare as the MW cards. Magic and Wizards is certainly one of Yu-Gi-Oh's most obscure historical topics, and one of the toughest for me to pull a script together for. I haven't even touched upon card print quality with ink colors and tones and all that jazz. Nor will I, because that's going way too much in the weeds and is better in written form anyways. On that note, big shoutouts to my wonderful sources, YG Old School, Omega Collectibles LLC, Yui Kenta, and YG Organization. It is incredibly fascinating to look at a side of Yu-Gi-Oh!, one that was before the OCG, that took place during Bandai's run. Bandai never stood a chance, and Konami had their eyes on the prize since day one. They knew Yu-Gi-Oh! Was going to be something big, even if their history shows that they may have failed to understand how card games should actually work. But what do you all think? Would Yu-Gi-Oh! Have been viewed differently had it attempted to stay as Magic and Wizards? Or was the change to its simpler Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG name ultimately the right call? Does this stuff interest you? Because it sure as hell does for me. Konami made the decision that would define Yu-Gi-Oh! To what it is to this day. And the rest, as they say, is history.